So I'm currently an associate professor at HEC in Paris, which I've joined recently after a couple of years at INSEAD, also in Paris. And I have a PhD from Columbia University, which was in sociology, and I've switched to management. So that's what I do. OB first, organizational behavior, then management. And what I study is creativity mostly in the fashion and luxury context, which incidentally is also what I teach sometimes. In HEC, I'm also in charge of a certificate on luxury. That's what I do. So, when I was a young PhD student, I wanted to study creativity basically, and actually broadly the creative industries and something cool, right? And at first I thought about the movie industry, but then it was also a very crowded space in research. And I was like, I'm at Columbia University in New York. I'm from Paris. What is the one industry that unites the two cities, right? It's not finance. It's not, because finance is not creative, right? But it's fashion actually, and you have New York and Paris, the two fashion capitals of the world. And and I talked to a bunch of people in New York, and they had connections, and I started interviewing people, working with colleagues, using my French connections also to study the industry. So the location was really a big driver. And then there was fashion was more intriguing because I was really confused about what was going on. Especially when you're French, is you get exposed to fashion because it's in the media, and what is going on, right? It's so yeah. It's both this mix of being intrigued and also the topic itself. I thought it would the industry would really help address the topic. How do you know what dress you should make? It's just crazy, right? When you think about it, how do you know that? So that was the question I had. How do you know when you're a movie maker? How do you know, right? So it's a big question. As an academic, how do you know which concepts you should use and how you should test it? Right. So basically, it's a study that we started a couple of years ago with a former PhD student at ESSEC, Yue Zhao. What we were interested in. So first, we both have a passion for the industry, right? And but we were wondering. So one of the big transformations or changes in fashion historically was this move from haute couture to ready-to-wear. And so it was very hard also for the French industry to accept that, right? Because they were really much about haute couture, right? Haute couture is custom-made, very expensive. Ready-to-wear is industrialized, less expensive. And the question for them is, how do we survive this big change in the industry, right? We also with the rise of the middle classes in Europe and the US and so on and so forth. So we decided to look at that, and especially how haute couture houses at the time Dior, Yves Saint Laurent and so on would actually move to a new space and change also their conception of fashion, right? Because it was fashion as haute couture, it was very prestigious, very high level, very expensive, to fashion as a mass market. And we said, okay, what could drive this type of change, which was a major change for the industry, and I would argue also for the country and the world. And we say, well, perhaps it's the mobility of designers, right? So, people moving around. Yves Saint Laurent moving from Dior to Yves Saint Laurent actually creating his own house, and then perhaps, what was the influence of this on him creating Yves Saint Laurent Rive Gauche, which was a diffusion line, which was ready to wear, and keeping also his haute couture business. And we started looking at that, using some of my previous research on mobility networks of designers. And what we looked at is different types of mobility networks. Do you send people out? Do you hire people? How are you positioned in this big network of exchange of talent? Which is very important in fashion. I mean, it's it's like in soccer basically, where you have the mercato, right? People move around. Also, academia happens a lot. So we looked at that, and what we found is that although at the beginning of the change, as the shift towards ready-to-wear, it was important. To be able to get information from sending people around. In the second phase, what was more important is hiring talent that was already exposed to the transition. And we look at that tension between the two. And so we're still working on it. And we hope we manage to publish this at some point in the next few years. So the change in fashion from haute couture to ready-to-wear was not isolated. There is famous work by a colleague of mine, at HEC, Rodolphe Durand, that looked at the transition from traditional cuisine to nouvelle cuisine, right? And in France, so it's although it didn't happen at exactly the same time, it was kind of the same process. Also in movies, right? The emergence of the nouvelle vague, in France, and similar things elsewhere. All this is part of this huge transition that happened after World War II. And with the rise of the middle class, and all fields, you have new things emerging, new ways of producing, new values. People also got richer very quickly, and they had more money that they wanted to spend, right? So, and on the production side, new techniques making things cheaper, right? So, and globalization emerging as well. So yeah, it's part of a broader change. So in this recent work that we published in Org Science, we look at, so basically, while usually the focus of research in organizations is the organization, what we did is we shifted the focus and we looked at elements themselves. So in fashion, it's color, look, fabric, patterns, you name it. You think also about the automotive industry, like the design, styles, stuff like that. And we say, okay, what does it take for a cultural element to be successful, right? And in fact, what we found is that the elements that are embedded, so that's a technical term, but what it means is that elements that you can use with many other elements that are otherwise unconnected are more popular. And the explanation is that for us is because they're more resilient, they're more flexible. It's actually easier for designer to use them and to use them with other elements, right? And then you have this mix of various cultural elements, and that's the definition of creativity, which is how you connect things that are otherwise difficult to connect, right? So one example that is great is how in the past you could not we were told that green and blue would not go well together, right? There was a taboo there, and now. A couple of years ago, blue and green started to be this great combination that everyone liked and was chic and daring. And so that kind of stuff. So what we're doing now, we have one project on fur, which the use of fur, also related to this notion of sustainability and the role of social movements, basically in creative industries. So we're looking at how animal rights activists mobilize against fur, what kind of techniques they use, and the techniques that work and techniques that don't work. So that's a very cool project that we're doing on fur. Other projects, now I do have projects in other industries as well. So watchmaking, for example, which is a way for us to introduce the technological angle, because in watchmaking luxury, you still have style, but you also have technology, and which is a change from fashion where you only have style. You have a technological angle, but not as important. I would say these are the main projects. We also have a project on the entrepreneurship in fashion. What are the drivers that lead designers to create their own brands? And the processes behind that. We have a huge historical data set on that. Yeah, a bunch of projects and some more ideas about cultural elements that we're working on. So, when I studied 10 years ago now, it was a bit difficult to study fashion for many reasons. One is there was a lack of data on the industry. It's a very secretive industry, and part of the reason why they generate so much profit is, I don't think consumers know exactly what is going on. So you tell them, this is going to be the new style, okay, whatever, and I trust your expertise, and then I pay more, right? Now 10 years later, there is a lot of data on the industry. So it's an industry that went through a tremendous shift. Industries like the automotive industry, 40 years ago, they had a lot of data, right? So now But fashion, it's new. So that actually, it made things easier, which is good. And the other thing is that there is not much, I mean, it has changed a little bit, but in the past, there wasn't much respect for the industry itself among academics, right? Because it's superficial, you know. Luckily, that has changed a lot as well. And so, yeah, and things are getting better on that angle. I have a colleague at FIT in New York, a historian. When she started studying fashion at Yale, people were actually shocked. They thought it was unethical, you know, they were shocked. And she said, whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. And she's become a very successful academic, you know, and everyone like respects her and cites her. So I would say the main challenge for us now is like there may be too much data. So we don't know how to, you know, 10 years ago, it was like, okay, there is not enough data, and I was like, there is too much data. So the growth rate of data availability is exponential. There are very good papers that keep you going, right? So I would say Paul Hirsch, you know, 1972 on processing fads and fashion is absolutely fantastic paper. Still very true. It's incredible that you write a paper in the early 70s and this paper is still completely modern and, you know, incredibly good. I would argue that some colleagues, you know, like Catania and Feriani on the movie industry, Brian Uzi, you know, on Broadway shows, Candy Joe, all these people are very inspirational. I mean, and honestly, without them, I mean, it would be, because as an academic, you've been on the work of others, right? And without them, you know, obviously my supervisor, Harrison White, who was very helpful, also because very open-minded. Peter Berman at Columbia as well, you know, they both accepted fashion as a fascinating topic without even discussing it, which was great. And they, you know, methodologically also they were very helpful, you know, because it's a weird topic, right? Creativity in fashion. So how do you deal with it? I mean, how do you, you know, how do you deal with it quantitatively in addition to the qualitative part? Yeah, so I would say these are the inspirations. My PhD years were really the best. I mean, it was really great. I mean, because you have you learn all these things, you explore things, you know, you have great ideas. It's fascinating. I mean, and honestly, I liked it very much. And also, you exchange with professors. You know, you have time, which is a great asset, honestly. Time to read, which is, you know, after once you become a professor, you don't have time. You have to teach. You have to do like, okay. But yeah, so that's actually these are great years. I would argue that you know, you have to find. I mean, it's perhaps it sounds a bit cheesy, but honestly, you need to have to find a topic that you really like, and for which you have a passion. Otherwise, I mean, you can be a little bit tactical sometimes, and you work on a project you like less because you can publish a paper. Okay, why not? But if you don't have the passion for the topic, you're not going to have the energy to finish it. And even if people think it's ridiculous, just do it. I mean, and try to connect, because if they think it's ridiculous, perhaps they have a reason, right? And try to understand and try to, you know, create this coalition around you of people who, and you will convince them eventually, because you will also change your perspective. Right? Find good co-authors, people who would basically help you, you know, to help you translate your fresh ideas, which you will have as a PhD student anyway, into like something more mainstream. So keep what is fresh and original, and put it in a nice package that will convince people that you know what you're doing. Yeah, you need to have a tough skin. You know, it's well, it happens. You just have to accept, I guess. It's part of the game, and after a while, you become also better at handling challenges and questions. Also, you understand that the others go through the same thing, right? So you can create this sense of community, and in fact, it's become more like critique than criticism. And you basically integrate what other people tell you, but again, I insist, without losing what makes you, different. And yeah, so it's part of the training. When I write a review now, I'd always try to be nice at the beginning, because there's always something good in the paper. For example, I mean, saying otherwise is not very honest. And I think this is how we should also change the style in academia. Sometimes too blunt. I mean, it's not very helpful because there are good things. I mean, of course, you can always improve. So I think we should be more careful around this.